Krista Smith here. I am doing a little bit different video today. This week I had a unique experience that I got through mostly by the help of people sharing their own experience with me. And my hope is that by sharing with you my experience of getting a callback on my mammogram for the first time could help you in the same way. If you're new here, I'm Krista Smith, and I'm on a mission to help ambitious women thrive as leaders by sharing what I've learned and am still learning as an executive, a lifelong optimizer, and a beauty school wannabe. Let's get into it. So before I start to share, I want to acknowledge that not everybody's experience ends up the same way that mine did, and that of course the steps and the feelings within everybody's experiences aren't going to be the same. I'm acknowledging that and saying this is my experience, and my hope is that that helps you. So the setup is that of course it was one of those crazy weeks. I'm changing jobs and they announced it to hundreds and thousands of people. And so it was just an absolutely long, crazy, happy, sad day that was wonderful, sad, and exhausting. And I crawled into bed and then finally checked my voicemail. And that's when I got the call back from the imaging center that had done my mammogram the Friday before. And they said that they needed me to come back in. And that's all that the message said. And I can tell you that at that moment, everything just stopped for me. The things that my mind started thinking about were completely different than everything I had thought about that day. And, it immediately goes to my kids and it goes to what does this mean? And just frankly, a whole lot of terror. So what I did is I used a journey mapping technique. It's a lean technique to get voice of the customer, but I did it on myself. And I reflected on this whole experience. Luckily for me, it was only a 2-day experience, but I wanted to share with you from that starting point of getting the mammogram and then getting that call, all the way through the range of emotions, and then finally finding out the results of the diagnostic mammogram. So I built a chart. The vertical axis of this chart at the top is just absolute elation, and then at the bottom is terror, and that's the only way that I can describe the feeling that shows up when you're suddenly faced with the fact that you could have cancer. And we start right there in the middle is baseline. We start with the mammogram the Friday before. No big deal, get one of those every year. Don't even think a thing about it. All the way up to next, listening to that voicemail late at night, which is terrible for anybody's sleep, of course. And then the next step was calling back first thing the minute that they opened. I even started calling before they opened because I was hoping that they would open the phone up beforehand. Calling back and somebody answered and I asked them, what's going on? What does my chart say? And I was so pleased because they did tell me what my chart said. And I didn't understand all of the jargon, but understood enough to know that it wasn't something clearly awful, just something questionable. The thing though that was disheartening is that when I did get scheduled, they weren't able to get me an appointment for a full month out. And what matters most when you get some news that could be really scary is more information. And the thought of waiting a full month just was heart-wrenching. We told family and just said, hey, this is going on. It was hard to tell people, but also really a huge relief to have a community of support. What I did next was ask for help. We had determined that the thing that we needed very most was to see how we could get an earlier appointment so that we could get more information faster. I asked my primary doctor for help, saying, I got this callback result. Is there anything you can do to help? I asked my mom, and she was absolutely on board to help. And then I asked my wonderful, fabulous assistant, and we created a plan. And the plan was that I was on the callback list. My mom was going to call every morning, twice a morning, politely, and just validate whether or not there were any open appointments, because I'm in meetings generally all day for my work, and it would be really hard for me to make that call. We had a plan in place, and asking for help, bringing people on board. I was so lucky to have this immediate community of support around me for people that wanted to help, and giving people a job to do that was clear and that they could actually do was really effective. My mom called the first thing the next morning, and then they started calling me back on the callback list. I don't know if my doctor ever called. She might have. I'm not sure if she did. But I think that just by having my mom called, and she introduced herself as my mom and just said that we're going to be calling and checking every few hours to see if any kind of appointment opened up so that I could get information and so that I could get in. I think that maybe it moved me up in the callback list, maybe it didn't. But these wonderful women at the imaging center started calling me too. And within a few hours, I was rescheduled for at least a few weeks in. And then later that day, I got another call that said that I could get in that day. And they just said, "We've got an appointment opening up, can you?" And I said yes. So I was really flexible. The plan for my assistant, and she was absolutely on board, but we didn't actually need to leverage it, was that she knew that if my mom called her, she was supposed to find me no matter where I was, interrupt me, clear my calendar, and get me to that appointment. But we didn't end up needing that angle. So we got in that same day. I was able to have my husband come. He was able to clear his calendar, and he met me at the diagnostic center. What happens that I learned, the first screening that you get and that all of us get every year is a screening. And then if you get called back, you get a diagnostic. I was really lucky because my sister explained this to me, because she's had all the things and is kind of an expert in weird medical results, and at least let me know what to expect there. So I got that quick appointment in with the diagnostic center, had another mammogram that was really specific based on the area of concern, and an ultrasound. And then that very appointment, after they looked at the films right there, the physician came in and she was able to tell my husband and me that everything was okay. And that's where you see the emotion just go from really uncomfortable and terrified and concerned all the way up truly to elation. And then we had the joy of being able to let the people know that were concerned alongside of us, that had so generously shared their own stories, whether it was them or their wives that had also been called back. We let them know that we were all clear, and that the first image, you might have had overlapping tissue or whatever it was, but when they looked closer, it was okay. And of course, that relief is incredible. I know not everybody gets that. Most women do. If you look at the statistics, most women who get called back on mammograms get that all clear. And of course, some don't. And if you're one of those people, my heart goes out to you, because I recognize that the terror continues and the fear and the unknown. Now, when I got home last night, I wanted to really reflect on what that experience was like, and if there was a way that I might be able to articulate it to you all to maybe help somebody who's in a similar situation, because it's the waiting that really is torture. And I thought of a few things that helped during the waiting. There's not a whole lot, but there are a few things that at least helped me. The first thing that helped was knowing that I had been getting my regular mammograms. And if they did find anything, it couldn't have been more than a year old, and regardless, we caught it early. That gave me a tiny bit of peace of mind. The next thing, really truly, that was incredibly powerful was that act of telling people who love me. That's the people in the family or the people that I happened to interact with during those couple days that I trusted enough, that I knew were level-headed, that wouldn't freak out, that I knew cared about me. And both my husband and I shared appropriately with people that we care about and know care about us, and the amount of love and similar situation stories that poured out was really humbling, and it created a sense of connection. And that was so meaningful and so courageous of people to share what happened to them or what happened to their wife when this happened, and just to recognize and acknowledge how scary it is in that moment, and that you're not alone, and it's not unique, that so many people have been through it, and that there's one of those really kind of special universal connections that I was able to tap into because of people's generosity in sharing. Now, of course, what helped was the focus on getting that fast diagnostic mammogram. I always feel better when I make a plan of action and I can do something in the midst of crisis or fear, where I can do something that is at least actionable and might help. And that act of focusing on what matters most right now, and knowing that it's getting more information, and then having a team of people with my doctor and my mom and my assistant that were like, yep, we're on board. We're going to do this, like with singular focus. It sounds really silly, but it was powerful that I had this incredible cadre of women that had the same focus as I do. And they're like, we're going to freaking get her in there. And that was beautiful. I also, in a weird way, felt like the women at the imaging center, because they're all women. I felt like they were on board with me too, and that we were bounding together to make this happen. I was lucky that I was really busy at work for those couple of days, so when I was able, I had to get engrossed in what was going on, and I had that work as a distraction. I did take some Benadryl to sleep, because the first thing for me that goes when I'm full of anxiety is my sleep, and then it compounds on itself to where I don't get sleep, and then I can't manage my anxiety as well, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. So I did go ahead and take some Benadryl to sleep for those nights. I chose not to doom Google. I looked up the American Cancer Society, what happens when you get a mammogram callback, but that's basically it. I knew enough that it wasn't going to help me to try to find horror stories, so I just didn't. And then finally, you've heard me asking it this key question that I'm just learning about, but asking that at every stage. And it's this idea of when you've been given bad news, or potentially bad news in my case, not spending any time looking backwards, saying, why did this happen to me? Why me? It's unfair. Because it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what matters now. And that put me and the people around me in the mind frame of generative ideation and thinking and creating that plan, building the team. What can we actually do? And that gave a little bit of a sense of control back. And there's just incredible power in that question. I'll put some information in the notes below, but that question is credited to Dr. Danny Freeland, who has this whole incredible YouTube series on what happened when he got diagnosed with brain cancer. And he's recently passed away, unfortunately. But for him, what mattered most now was living intensely loving relationships and leaving a legacy with his work. And he moved forward with doing that in the months that he had left, almost the moment that he got that terrible news. So that is an incredibly inspiring story, if I could encourage you to watch that. Anything significant like this really causes us to further reflect on what we're thankful for. So I wanted to end the video with at least some of the things that on a daily basis I forget to be thankful for. But when the rubber meets the road and stuff goes down, these things showed up for me, and I am deeply grateful. First one is my husband. The second one is my mom, my sister, the many people that love me and that I trust enough to be able to share some scary personal information with, and just the generous reactions that I got, and the empathy, the heartfelt empathy that people were able to give. People that were able to share their experience, having a similar experience and meeting me where I was, saying, yeah, I get the terror. I've been there. Or my loved one has been there. The fact that I'm in a country that has good health care and that I've got good health insurance. I mean, those things I don't spend a lot of time every day being thankful for, but I should. Being in a city that has a good imaging center. And having gone there for many years so that they could compare old films with the current films, that allows the analysis to be more complete, more thorough, and for all the records to be in one place. I was really lucky to have done that, and I'm grateful. I am grateful that my job is flexible enough to where I was able to take calls, that my assistant cares so much about me that she wanted to help. I'm grateful for my health. I need to be grateful every single moment of every day because, of course, without our health, nothing really works. And I've been so lucky with my health. So, dang it, I'm grateful for my health. I am grateful for the people that have dedicated their life to breast cancer diagnosis, research, and support because there's an incredible, incredible infrastructure. And that leads to my final thing, and that is just the wonder of what can happen when women unite and focus around a powerful cause. I hope that this video has been helpful for you. I would love to hear your experiences in the comments, and if you've had a similar experience, either with a similar outcome or a different outcome, what helped in those moments of terror? Thank you so much. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon.